podcast with artists and writers is who agrees to actually do the conversations. And Louise Ogden was one of those writers who agreed to do a conversation who I never thought would agree to do one of the conversations. She's a moderator on the subreddit Fantasy Writers. And thrilled when she said yes. She's a very talented writer. She puts challenges up all the time. I mean, what to say? It's incredibly thrilling to have had a conversation with her as I get to know her as an artist. She's got tons of fiction available on Wattpad. Of course, there'll be a link to that in the show notes. As to the show notes, they are available in more detail on my website, brianyellow.com. I guess on iTunes or even in Podcast Republic, they aren't necessarily as detailed as they potentially are on the website with links and all that good stuff. You can follow me also on brianyellow on Twitter. That's pretty much it for right now. Enjoy Louise Ogden.
"30 works up on Wattpad. That's amazing.
They're short stories. They're not.
They're short stories.
They're not all. Well, some of them are only a half a page long. I put one of the 50-word fantasy ones up there. So they're not. They're short stories. They're not all chapter books. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I've noticed that a lot of people who do a lot of work on Wattpad, they don't seem to have the readership that the people who hit the big one work novels do. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah. I tried serializing something up there, but it didn't work kind of just straight off. And whenever I sit to write down a serial for there, it always expands into a full novel. So I'm trying to get something more substantial up there, but it's hard, and I keep starting something, and then I think this is too good to be put up on Wattpad as a serial. So
no, you shall not eat my novel for free.
No, it's not quite like that. It's that I did start One Piece City Spirits this time last year, and
you're really good with the titles. You're really good titles.
It got about 10,000 words in, and then I went back to my current work in progress. So it is.
What is it called? Your work in progress?
My work in progress is White Knights. It's
White Knights.
Yeah, it's a bit like if
that's KNIGHT, right?
No, it's nights, as in evening.
Oh, okay.
The title is a phenomenon that happens at high latitudes. It's when the sun doesn't set low enough below the horizon for it to get fully dark.
And you're in England too. Are you up in that latitude, or have you lived up in that area?
No, not quite. It's more the latitude of St. Petersburg and southern Scandinavia.
Oh, okay.
We were there last year on a cruise. That didn't inspire me to write the story, but we certainly the Russians call it Belia Nochi. Or something like that, and it's a big festival during the summer months in St. Petersburg. So I borrowed the idea from there, but in my fantasy world, the White Knights cause people to be up all night and go crazy, which is always fun.
So does your work in progress take place in one night, or just during that festival?
It takes place in a city very similar to St. Petersburg, not during the St. Petersburg festival itself, but
kind of like a university town.
Yeah, it's not really. It's set around. Well, it's set around a church actually.
Okay.
It's a bit like if Dostoevsky was writing Cadfael in a modern fantasy in a fantasy setting. So there's this ghost, and she can't remember who killed her. She doesn't know who killed her. She was pushed into the river on a stormy night by someone. So she goes back, she can't go back home for reasons I explain in the book. And she goes to see her priest, and she asks her priest to help find out who killed her. And it's a conspiracy, obviously. So that was the sort of fantasy angle of it. I love the 19th century Russian classics, and so I sort of based the setting on that, and hence the White Knight type of theme. But it's not actually real. It's not actually real St. Petersburg. It's a fantasy ripoff of it.
That's interesting. You were talking recently on Reddit about the my mind just went completely blank. It's doing that lately quite often. I think it's age.
Yes.
I'm turning very, very old. You were talking about how it's kind of like a crime thriller type of novel, type of story, set in a fantasy realm. I like that.
Yes, it. I don't know whether you ever read Gorky Park by Martin Cruz Smith. It basically, Gorky Park. It's a set in Moscow. This guy finds two bodies under the ice and ends up tangling with the KGB, and the mystery takes up about half the book, and the rest, the next half of the book is basically escaping the KGB, going to America, finding the killers, that kind of thing. But
I did read that. I did. Wasn't that also set in? Oh, that was Fatherland. Never mind. It's kind of a similar plot, I think.
Right, I haven't actually read Fatherland, but it does sound a bit very similar. The mystery turned out to be a little bit too trivial, but the villain sort of took over. He tries to kidnap the priest. They kind of I've taken a lot of inspiration for this draft from 24, because that's what we've been watching recently, and
the new season, or are you going back in time?
No, we're going back to the second season, the LA nuclear bomb one. But it's basically that kind of Jack Bauer style, running around town, doing sort of black ops, that kind of thing. But it's
really fascinating.
It is really because this is only a second draft. It's still finding the story. The first draft was still had the thriller elements in it, but it was horrible people doing horrible things to each other. So I kind of cut a lot of that out.
That's very interesting. So you find inspiration in this cold, harsh land filled with this government that doesn't care for its people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the government's more interested in preventing riots than actually governing.
Keeping the people off its back, basically. Well, that's how they got in power to begin with, is
exactly
sending the people against its own monarchy or whatnot. That's fascinating. Yeah. So this is your fourth novel.
In a matter of speaking, yes. The stuff I have up on Amazon is short novellas.
Novellas, okay.
Novellas. The Flame Owl is only about 15 to 20,000 words long, and Bull's Blood is about 50,000 words.
Great title too. I like that. It's very visceral. It makes me think it's going to be a very punchy work.
It will be punchy. Yes, you could say it's punchy. Sorry about this, Brian. I'm just trying to think what to say.
No, it's no problem that you're supposed to do that. That's what this is all about.
It's kind of Carry On Matahari. I mean, I'm sorry, I probably have to explain to some people what Carry On movies are.
Please do. I have no clue there either.
They were a series of British movies from the 1970s where people run around spouting double entendres and it's very, very British campy humour. But I took some of that, and it's sort of very sexual humour as well. But I took some of that. I updated the sexy parts and or the not safe for work parts, and sort of had a couple of gay couples and a woman who was sort of very strong sexually, and added a bit of a spy plot to it as well. So it is punchy. It's very.
Is this
punchy.
also a fantasy novel?
Yes, it's
that's really interesting.
I like the idea of ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of ghosts interacting with humanity on a more sort of equal level. So the ghost in Bull's Blood doesn't actually appear to be a ghost until very late on.
Maybe we can unpack the ghost idea. What
Yeah.
does that mean exactly? Interacting with the humans on a more equal footing, or more equal plane. Does that mean that this is the afterlife for everything, or are they stuck here?
The ghosts. The system is really that ghosts are humans who have been trapped, or humans who have died in sort of violent, sort of cold blood murder type situations, and they've been trapped on the mortal plane rather than going to the beyond or heaven, and they can pass for normal humans. So they can be felt, they can feel, they can pick stuff up. It's just that they are dead, and they're trying to find out who, or either find out who killed them, like in the White Knight's book, or trying to get some sort of justice for themselves.
If they get justice, do they have to leave this realm and go on to someplace else, or?
Yes, the sort of object of their existence is to find justice. With the White Knight's book, it's also to sort of reconcile with their family, because basically girl has an argument with her mother about witchcraft, runs out, goes skating, somebody corners her on the riverbank and pushes her into the water, and 4 or 5 months later her spirit manages to find its way back to the city where she died.
Mm-hmm. Where do you come up with your ideas for mythology, or the mythology of the ghosts? Did you just invent that, or are you looking at a history of religion?
Well, partly a lot of my magic system was made up to mesh with the 19th century setting. I've tried a lot of different magic systems in the setting, and the one that seemed to click was more of a sort of spirit world, paranormal type world, rather than say D&D style magic with mages and spellcasting and that kind of thing. So it's all very, it's very much the supernatural, paranormal aspects of it.
Sure.
And so
magic, in the current speaking of the term in fantasy nowadays, is a very hot topic. I mean, you don't want to say he spun his hands and spit ice bolts or whatnot. You want something more tangible, and I think that's the goal of the modern fantasy author. So let's really unpack that, because that's a really fascinating subject for me. Let's discuss magic in your world building. Yeah,
definitely. Well, what I started out with was definitely sort of D&D in an industrial setting. I used to read a lot of Joan Aiken's
steampunk. What was it?
Yeah, in a way, steampunk. I read a lot of Joan Aiken when I was about 12 or 13, and I loved her plots. But I also really loved fantasy, so Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. I think it was David Eddings at that time, and the Dungeons and Dragons books. And I wrote a lot of D&D fiction, and somewhere along the way,
Did you play D&D?
Yes, I played D&D since I was about 10. But
you're so lucky.
we were sorry, I'm just trying to think. Sorry, Brian.
That's okay. I thought I lost you for a second. It's like, no.
Yeah. No. with adding that magic to a different kind of setting, because I was reading a lot of the Victorian classics as well. Not quite Dickens and Austen, but more along the lines of the French writers like Émile Zola, and the Russian writers like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. And I loved that setting. I loved that sort of alongside the more traditional Dungeons and Dragons sort of knights and castles. I loved the hussars and the big ladies in their big skirts and big hats. And
I hate to interrupt you again because your chain of thought is amazing, but my goodness, like in terms of coming from your background of role-playing games and D&D and Tolkien books, to get into those type of classics, the Austen and the French, it's a nice divergence. It's a path that is less trodden by readers. I mean, basically, you should stay on the main path of fantasy, and you went in this awesome direction. That's cool.
I started off reading a lot of fantasy, and then my mum and dad decided to tell me to read Jane Eyre, and I read Jane Eyre, and I actually quite enjoyed it because, and I as I said, I quite like the books of Joan Aiken, who is a British children's writer. She writes sort of alternative history. She doesn't put a lot of magic into her books, but she wrote a lot of sort of fantasy history British stories, but they're all set in the sort of 1830s, 1840s style period. So I kind of accumulated different influences along the way. But I actually gave up English at 16 at school, because you can do that in England, and ended up reading a lot more than I probably would have done had I continued to do English literature at school. So that really fired my imagination, but it was the sort of stuff that you don't necessarily read in school, if you get my drift.
No, totally. I did my degree in English creative writing, and I did not like the literature classes very much.
No.
I wish I had your mind, because honestly, I probably would have really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No,
I bulked against it. I love my Shakespeare, but I could not get into the other stuff.
Yeah. I really wish actually I'd had to stay on and do English, because I think the English education system is mad, allowing people to go down to 4 subjects at 16. That's not it's a very narrow specialized curriculum rather than a broad one. I think the broad aspects of the American system are much better, but that's by the by. So with the magic system, okay. I really tried so many different kinds of magic. I ended up with a very, very low magic world. And then for some reason I put a werewolf into my book. And I wanted to, well, not a werewolf, a werefox. And then I started going back towards much more, as I said, that was when I started looking more at the paranormal and supernatural type creatures and beings and magic, rather than the Tolkien magic, which it doesn't really fit in certain ways in industrial society, because you've got magitech would possibly take over. I don't know. We don't know what would happen if magic existed, but I felt that perhaps society needed a bit more weird and wonderful and crazy magic rather than systematic magic, if you see what I mean.
Well, what do you think magic is? When you say the word magic, what exactly does it mean?
Well, it's something that happens outside of normal, natural
so there's no explanation for it scientifically.
No, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. No scientific explanation of it. It can become in some fantasy an alternative science, but it's something that is supernatural. So
in your world, is there anybody that can explain magic?
They try.
There's
a saying in my world: if you mess with magic, magic messes with you.
Okay.
It's a short.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a short version of a quote from a scientist who was also a mystic. So she wrote a textbook on astronomy, but prefaced it by saying, you know, this isn't all magic. Magic is very difficult to define. So I've tried to sort of examine the real world, and I hope you like it. But the magic sort of responds to people's attempts to control it too much by I don't know. I think I've compared it in the past on the forum to magical diabetes. So if you overuse magic, like if you eat too much sugar, you get ill, or things start happening to you. So people and magic, it's a bit difficult to reconcile with Sanderson's laws of magic, because obviously, you know, you don't want to be throwing Deus Ex Machina into it, but
No.
there's always the potential for magic to go too far to screw up your life. I mean, in the first chapter of my book, the protagonist comes across a woman whose skin has been bleached stark white by magic, by misusing magic. I haven't really defined what she did to end up that way, but it's basically a warning to the protagonist not to go overboard with her own magic.
It's very interesting because this is new. The whole fantasy ideas. We've only been doing this for since Lovecraft, maybe in the beginning of the 20th century. And before that, it didn't really exist. People weren't writing about magic and the fantasy. Maybe they were writing about the occult. Maybe they were writing about gods and devils and things of that nature. But they didn't have what we have today. I'm gonna make some coffee and make as little noise as possible. But now I'm talking about it, so people are going to go back and listen for the. So I mean, now we're in the 21st century, and we're trying to make sense of something that is all make believe, right? I mean, this is so fascinating. This woman has now bleached her skin with this thing called magic. This now is a drug. It's a drug. You could use it.
Yeah.
You can make your life easier to, wreak havoc on the world, right?
Yeah.
Or what is she using the magic for in your world? I mean, is she killing people, or is she making her life easier? Is she cheating?
It's more like sort of smoothing over life. I mean, there's there's a concept of what I call the slipstream, which is a basic spirit pathway. So you can do a lot with the slipstream. You can travel in time. You can travel very fast, very large distances in a very short period of time. You can even be walking down the street and subtly speed up, and sort of completely unconsciously using it. So what she's probably been doing is just using this every day.
So you're basically cheating, and you don't know how she has the ability to do it. Now me, I'm Joe Schmo. I don't have the ability to speed up time or go back in time. But she doesn't even know how she does it.
Yeah. Huh. Effectively, yes. Sometimes it's just unconscious, but sometimes it's you just use it to try and get somewhere in the book. My heroine in one part of the book uses the slipstream to get to a burning building where her girlfriend is. So she uses it to rescue her girlfriend from a burning building, and she gets in trouble for doing this because she claims it was because she panicked and she was trying to get to cash before she burned to death. And the local church hierarchy don't look kindly on this kind of use of magic because of the damage it can do to someone. And so they have this whole inquiry into whether she was right to use it or not. And it kind of forms part of one of the sort of mini climaxes during the book. So there's a whole sort of hierarchy of needs here. I mean, if they accept that she was right to use it in that situation eventually, that she didn't use it just for convenience sake. She used it as a kind of rescue. But even so, they don't like the fact that she's using it deliberately at all.
So it's a nice story. It has a lot. I mean, honestly, when you're reading fiction, you want conflict, and
Yeah,
you have this basically an easy button to life
yeah,
that if you touch it, your life not only gets easier, but it also gets immensely harder.
yes, that's part of it. Yeah.
That's really fascinating. I was speaking with there's two guys in the sub that are world builders. I mean, they really dig deep. Jason Abbott and Dylan
Oh yeah,
Moonfire. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, they love this world building. And they both spent years building these worlds from basically the foundation up, and they decided they wanted to throw characters into it, and they found that extremely difficult to do. Do you find it the same where you find that you have built these rules and it's difficult to fit these characters into it, or have you actually built a character and said, okay, I'm going to build the rules around this character?
Well, I started off with the basic idea, which was Dungeons and Dragons in an industrial world. I mean, my family comes from the industrial heartlands of the north of England, and so I kind of had this idea of dark satanic mills with magic in it, and it kind of progressed from there in all sorts of different directions. But the character, I find it incredibly difficult as a person to journal stuff. I don't like writing down a lot of world building notes or a world building Bible or drawing lots of maps. I like writing the stories and seeing how they turn out. So the premise was there,
Mm-hmm.
and the ideas were there, but the specifics of the characters and the world come out largely through the story writing. A lot of the stuff on Wattpad was written a handful of years ago when I was hanging out on the world building subreddit and answering a lot of their weekly prompts with little stories.
Oh, they do prompts over there too? I didn't even know that. Just hang out there.
They did. It was back in 2014. Then they stopped for, I don't know, a year or two, and I lost the habit of writing all the stories. But before they stopped, they might. I don't know whether they still do it. I haven't been there for a while, but yes, definitely go and look if you're interested.
I see tons of like people asking questions, and I want to jump on and answer their question, but I'm afraid that they actually require effort. I can't. I could answer a question like this with like 500 words, and it could be a story, but I don't know if they want me to just off the cuff it.
The prompts on world building were just tell us about your world in 500 words or fewer. They weren't story writing, but I noticed some people responded with stories, and that gave me the idea to respond with a story each time. And I did actually win one of their prompts, so I'm happy.
I like that in the fantasy writing subreddit, there isn't really like a winner or loser.
Yes.
And we just write, and if you want to comment on somebody's efforts, that's great. If not, it just kind of goes into the ether. And
no, I like that too. I like that with the prompts. I think once you add if you add something like a deadline in, I found it helped a lot more than I sometimes go on subreddits like simple prompts or world prompts, and they don't necessarily have very many submissions. And I find it very difficult to write things short to a prompt that's just open-ended.
yeah,
But with some of the prompts on fantasy writers, and particularly with the challenges, there's enough of an impetus to write something because you've got a deadline. You've got to submit the content by certain time. And with world building, it was always a weekly challenge. So you write the challenge, and you've got a week to post it, and you might win a cute flare. But hey, that's not the biggest part of the thing. It's just to stretch the imagination.
I want my crown. I'm dedicated. I'm gonna win it one month. I swear. No, I'm joking. Oh, that was a good story, though. I have a feeling I haven't looked. I haven't done any counting, but it looks like the one-eyed Ogden story is gonna sweep this month. That was a good story. I read that on the exercise bike. I'm like, my God, that was good.
Yeah, it did. I've already posted the winner, so yes, it did.
Oh,
It
really?
did win.
That was a good piece. I voted for it immediately. It's like I have a hard time reading some of them, and that one I was like sucked in.
I quite like the witch's chat log. That was fun.
It was fun, and honestly, I think it takes a lot of effort to write something like that. Like you have to go back in and you have to edit those lines so they look authentic, and he did a good job.
Yeah.
I mean, not to critique somebody's work who can't defend themselves, but the only problem, I'm not going to say anything.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Well, I mean, the only problem I had with it was there's no true setting. There wasn't really any true character development, and I mean, if it was just the chat log, and I wouldn't have voted for it because there wasn't a lot of there was more to it.
Yeah.
But honestly, the artistic element of the chat log itself was brilliant. I thought it was really well done. It took effort. He said he did it like really quickly, and I doubt that because it took effort.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And honestly, the one-eyed God one was just nicely crafted.
Yeah, I haven't actually got around to reading something. I had a very busy week this week, so I'll have to have a look at that one. But I did enjoy the chat log one. But
where are yours at?
Mine?
Yes, you're not submitting any of them. Are the mods not allowed to submit anymore, or?
We are allowed to submit, but I have a lot of work to do on White Knights, and I won a couple of the I won the challenge a couple of times in a row about 3 years ago. So I thought I better kind of step back for a bit, and I do sometimes write to the prompt. It's just that sometimes they are the stories are too long, or the prompt takes me in a different direction. I think that's why with Jason, with his Viv's Last Cigarette book, that was actually a response to a prompt last year, but it took off, that story, and he wrote a much
That's good stuff.
book from the prompt. So sometimes I know that the interview on the Wattpad profile, that was a response to a prompt about 2 years ago. Medvedev was the first one I ever submitted to the Fantasy Writers prompt. I spent longer choosing a title for that one than I did writing it, actually, because it was really hard to title that story without spoiling it.
I think that's where Google Documents helps me out the most. I have to have a title in there, or it's I can't find it again.
Yes.
So I just put one in there and it stays.
I actually wrote the story as the prologue to a book, one of my practice books, and the prompt was write a story with a monster as a protagonist. Mm-hmm. And the problem was that if I titled it The Bear, everybody would know what happened. And if I struggled with that, but then I realized that the name Medvedev means bear in Russian. It's actually the name of Dmitry Medvedev, the Putin's henchman. But not many people would know that in an English-speaking environment. So I thought I could get away with Medvedev, which hints at the story's content, but it doesn't actually spoil it.
It's a nice name too. It has an ominous to it. Ominousness to it.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I don't know what it is about fantasy writing. I like the sub. I really do. And I don't do any critiques. I don't read anybody's fiction. I can't do it. I can't concentrate. I have like little ability to do that, but there's just something really cool about it. I don't know why. Can't put my finger on it, but I'm drawn there. I'm drawn to that monthly challenge.
I'm glad. I'm glad it works for you. I mean, I did enjoy entering them, but I did feel that I ended up winning a couple, as I said, in quick succession, and so I took a back seat. Maybe it's the time for me to come back again.
No, why not? I mean, it's good for you, right? I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
when
Yeah.
before this whole podcast thing has taken me by storm. I had website issues and editing issues and headache after headache after headache, and now I find my novels on the back burner going, hey, aren't you a writer? Are you a podcaster? Or are you a writer? Which one did you want to do? I can't remember exactly anymore. So
Well, I felt a bit like that a while ago because I've had bad anxiety issues over the last year or so, and
mm,
I kept fantasy writers going, but I didn't necessarily write fantasy for a bit. Um, I found it really hard to focus on the novel while stuff like Brexit and Trump were going on, and and as we're a week away from yet another general election, and I'm struggling as well, but that's a different issue. But most of the time I'm on fantasy writers because I'm a mod there and keeping that going, and it became very much I'm always talking about the theory of stuff and not actually doing the practical stuff. So I've gone back. I made it took me rather by surprise because I made a decision in the book and to throw in a twist, and the twist has taken me about 80,000 words to resolve. So I was getting to the point where I was putting a kind of very desultory ending on the book just to get it finished, and then suddenly I had a sort of second wind, and the thriller part took over. So actually, it is with me, writing is something that comes in fits and starts, but hopefully. Unfortunately, with the next book, I was going to start it with a bomb going off outside a theatre, and after Manchester last week, I don't think I can really do that. So I have to look at what I do to start the next book off. It doesn't really need that specific event, but it was kind of in there as a inciting incident, so that the protagonists could meet each other, and it was also a false flag operation. So that's not really very politically correct at the moment either. So I'm gonna have to find out how to restart that one, but that's the next project. But
it is funny how we kind of want to be in this profession where we have heroes who see something wrong, pick up a sword, strap on some armor, wear a helm, start swinging it at the bad guys, lop off some heads, and go rolling back in the town as heroes. But now the bad guys are not capable of being attacked in that way, and are invulnerable to those type of.
You mean in the real world?
Yeah.
Because this spring I've really felt that we are living in an age where there are real supervillains.
Yeah.
and
it's
and
scary. I listened to
and Jack Bauer is nowhere to be seen.
No, exactly. Jack Bauer is the one I'm talking about with the sword and the armor and the helm.
Exactly.
I listened to a guy. His name is Scott Johnson. He's one of my favorite podcasters. He says he's gained like 50 pounds since the election in November.
I know.
It's just a really horrible,
Yeah.
depressing world that we live in right now, where it seems like the people who are being elected just do not give a shit. And who the hell is actually casting their votes for these maniacs? Who are these angry people? I just I don't know.
I'm not going to talk because our election's a week away, and I'm trying to avoid the news. But it is a bit difficult. But maybe people have to make the mistakes. Maybe we have to make mistakes to learn from them. But that's the only thing
Who's making mistakes? I mean, who makes mistakes like that? I just don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It is frustrating. It is very, very frustrating.
I don't know either. That's what's sad. And we're the same generation too, almost. I'm maybe a couple years older than you, but it's like, really? Mom, Dad, is it you? Are there the kids behind us? Who the hell is making these decisions?
Yeah.
All right, that's it. Nobody else is anonymous anymore. You guys show me your votes. How's an election work in England? Let's talk about that, because I have no clue. Who are you voting for in a week? I mean, not you personally, but like I know you have the House of Lords,
right?
And there's a House of Commons, and then your Queen. You don't vote for her.
No, there's a House of Commons and a everybody. It's a bit like the Electoral College, only for real. So you've got you got party leaders like Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May, and they lead the political parties. I'm not going to say who I'm voting for because I don't want to.
No, don't do that. We don't want to know the specifics,
no. But basically, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party are the two main parties, and you vote for the individual constituency MP. So it's like going out to vote for the individual Electoral College member, and then they go and sit in Houses of Parliament. But where it's also like voting for Congress, of course, but with the difference that the leader of the majority in Congress would be the Prime Minister. If that makes any sense at all.
But you don't vote for him. It's whoever the party's in charge. They pick him, and then the Queen approves.
Yeah, the Queen has no choice. She always approves the person who's been elected by the party, and then by the country. She doesn't have her own opinion. She can't. She's not allowed to. But
you don't have a Governor General, right? Only Canada and Australia does.
The Governor Generals are effectively the Queen's representative in
those provinces or whatever.
Those countries. So we have the Queen. We have the original thing.
You have the original thing. The 90 some odd year old. How old is she now? 95, 90?
91.
91. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, of my family, only my mum was alive before the Queen came to the throne. That's scary. My dad's like 60, 65 this year, and he was born during the Queen's reign. That is just scary.
Yeah. Just Prince Philip just retired from public eye.
Yeah.
So I guess she'd probably be following suit soon, but
possibly. A lot of the roles that she's had in the past have been taken on by her children and maybe grandchildren by now. So yeah, she's kind of winding down, but she won't go anywhere until she goes somewhere. If you see what I mean, she won't abdicate, and I think she takes everything extremely seriously, and her public duties at least. She's obviously not a politician, but fair dues to her.
It's interesting. I enjoy the idea of Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah.
It's fun to think of a queen. All we have are these presidents that everybody hates.
Yeah.
Or at least 50% of us hate. The other 50% of us love them, deify them. Whoever's in power either is loved by half and hated by the other half.
Yeah, I kind of got that impression.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just so tired. I'm 40.
Yeah.
Hopefully I got another 40 years in me, but I don't think they're going to change too much to the positive.
No,
and I really don't want things to be knocked down either, because I love roads. I love having gas.
Yeah.
I love grocery stores. They're the best.
Yeah.
I am not about to fight a rebellion either. Forget about that. Definitely not what I want.
No.
So I don't know. Stay miserable, I guess. Try to fake smile. Hopefully that nobody's knocking on my door with jackboots on.
Exactly. Yeah. As they say that in a democracy, the person knocking on door at 5 o'clock in the morning is the milkman.
Yeah, hopefully, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, World War II, it was a very scary situation, and we don't ever want to see it repeated. And I love it that we call our leaders Hitler, and they're not. They're so not Hitler.
We have far too much to lose, and I think even Donald Trump realizes that.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the world that we live in. It's just bad. We have nothing to. I mean, we live in one of the most peaceful times on the planet. So I mean, complaining about stuff, there's nothing wrong with it. Let's complain. Let's raise our voices. Let's scream and cry and fight, because there are people dying in Africa right now of thirst, and that shouldn't be. 90 people just died in Afghanistan. Manchester, I don't know what happened. You said false flag. We're not going to get into it, because who the hell knows?
I didn't say false flag, obviously not. No, but it was but there were people who said that. There were people
Yeah.
who said that. Members of the Labour Party said that, and that's just like, how can you even think that? You know?
People are saying some horrible things on both sides just to hear their lips flap together.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And you never know, really. I mean, the people are saying the towers fell 15, 16 years ago, calling that a false flag,
Yes.
too. Like,
Oh,
come on,
yeah.
people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
2,000 people died. I mean, they died.
yeah,
Their
exactly.
families still have in pain.
Yeah.
Just stop. Keep living. Try to find your way to be happy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, though, honestly. This poor guy in Washington, D.C., they say he's insulated and getting fat and
Yeah.
politically manipulated, probably more than anything else. I see
Yeah.
pictures of him. He turns around to smile at his pretty third wife, and she smiles back at him, and he turns back to the camera, and she scowls like he's the most
Yeah.
disgusting man on the planet. It's like, oh, dude, I feel so bad for you. What a poor guy. He got what he wanted, and now he's the most despised person on the planet.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for. I mean, this is like the best. Speaking of fodder for fiction, I mean, we couldn't write this stuff in a million years. Nobody would believe you. And Deus Ex Machina. I mean, this is like, no, sorry, your character's unbelievable. I mean, he got what he wanted. Everybody hates him. It's like a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So, how much longer are we working on your work in progress?
I'm almost, I've been almost finished for a couple of months now, but I sit seriously, and that was almost finished about 80,000 words ago. But I
I know it's so incredibly long.
I wrote the climax about a week ago.
Oh, good for you.
I have fragments of the ending now, and I have a plan for the epilogue. So hopefully another month and it should be done. But I've got
you.
It's a bit like the old Zeno's paradox, where Achilles and the tortoise are having a race, and Achilles can never finish the race, because every time he goes a certain distance, he goes half the distance again, and then half the distance again, and allegedly he will never finish. So that's what I'll send you a link to that to put it in the show notes if you want. But that's
sure.
what it feels.
I didn't even realize that was a Greek story, honestly. I've always heard of the tortoise and the hare.
Yeah.
Interesting. How those Greeks came up with everything.
I can't remember whether it's Achilles and the tortoise or the Zeno's paradox or whatever, but that's what we did that at school sometime. I don't know, 20 years ago now. I can't remember.
So how long is the story going to be at the end of the
day? The second draft will probably come in, say, 160, 170,000 words, but I have to cut that down.
Yeah, that's a very long piece of fiction. How many pages is it right now?
I don't know. They're all in Scrivener, so I don't really do pages.
Oh wow!
But it's going to have to come down to maybe below 150. I can't.
What is the Yeah, well, 150 pages.
150,000 words. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay. I was dumb for saying 150 pages.
It's fine.
No, it was a dumb comment. I should have assumed 150,000 words. Why Scrivener, honestly, over like a Google Docs or a Word doc or something like that?
Google Docs. I never really got into using Google Docs. I've always either used Word. I've always tried to use an offline web processor. I've used Google Docs for documents for critique, but honestly, it lags so much at high word counts that I haven't used it as a word processor. But with Scrivener, you can arrange chapters and scenes in different orders, and you're writing scene by scene, and you can put them into chapter folders, or you can keep them linear. With Word, I use Word for short stories. I use Word when I'm probably just going to write one chapter after each other. But with White Knights, it has kind of about 4, maybe 5 point of view characters, and the stories aren't. They're all part of one story. There's no separate plot lines like in Game of Thrones, but it's still very difficult to arrange each scene where each scene should go. So you have a point of view character, you have a flashback, you have a separate point of view character, you have things going on at the same time or slightly overlapping. So you've got to kind of think which scene should I show first. And so I think Scrivener is much better for that than Word is.
You know how you sold me? It was when you said you could break up the chapters and the scenes and the book into chapters. Yeah. Because man, my first novel, Compounded Interest, I had so much trouble scrolling through the thing. Like I'd have a thought on chapter 3 when I was on chapter like 40. Like, okay, scroll. It was really arduous.
And with Scrivener, you can see the word count per scene. So you can see we've got 1,500 words and you maybe need to wrap the scene up fairly quickly. Whereas with Word, you have to do a lot of stuff to try and find the word count for a particular scene, and it's not that easy. So actually, I do much prefer Scrivener now, but Word is fine.
It's not expensive though, is it? It's like $20-$30, something like that.
It's brilliant. It was £40, I think. So it's wrong way around. $40, £30, yeah.
Okay.
But
I might consider it. I'm always just considering things though, and then I try to pirate it, and it's like always the worst way to do anything.
Try the free trial because you get 30 days of usage, so you get 30 times 24 hours worth of usage rather than
okay.
consecutive.
Oh, really?
So try the free trial and have a go, because it's certainly very useful if you've got a very complicated structure to your novel.
So, like for somebody like myself who's barely ever writing, I've got like 24 years worth of writing. I could use it.
Effectively, yeah. They do regular discounts, and they do a free code if you win National Novel Writing Month and that kind of thing. So it's definitely worth investigating. I think their policy was to try and keep it accessible for a lot more people than say stuff like Vellum, which is the sort of professional self-publishing ebook creator, which is $200 or something grossly extortionate like that. So
yeah, tell me about it. I use also Adobe software as well. I use Audition, I use Photoshop, and I'm trying to get an After Effects as well. Oh my goodness, the stuff is so expensive, and
even Office has now gone to a subscription model, so it's £80 a year, or I don't know, $100 a year. So yeah,
I don't know what they're trying to do to us. I don't know what they're trying to do. What else do we have to talk about? Can you think of anything that we didn't cover that we should definitely discuss?
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
It means a lot to me that you would trust me with this and talking about your work in progress. And I really enjoy the work that you're doing on fantasy writing. I think the group of you, you and Aquarius and Jason, and I'm really horrible with names, or I would just use them all. But what's that?
Clockwork Lycanthrope.
Yes, I have never actually seen them do anything except for one challenge. They're doing okay, I hope.
They are, yeah, they're fine. They run the forum, so they're the big they created the forum, so they get the, but you know,
I don't know. She's the only one I haven't talked to, I guess, and I don't know whether I should reach out or see if she wants to get on the podcast and talk. Or
definitely. I think she would have a lot of a good, interesting things to say about the history of the sub as well.
Oh, really? Okay. I've been kind of leaving it alone because I interacted with all three of you guys. I mean, all the time.
Sure.
You yelled at me one time.
And then there's don't forget Medicienne. We just added a new mod, and she's been around for quite a while as well. So she's cool.
If you have any ideas of people that you think I should talk to, I am definitely in it for the long haul. I really enjoy these conversations a lot. I learn a lot. I have a lot of fun with it too, and it's the whole different side of my brain. I mean, I could sit down here in the dark and just pound out words all day long, or I could try to figure out what other people are doing too.
Yeah.
And also, it's the meshing. I wanted to mention,
Yeah.
I know what I wanted to ask you. With your work in progress, are you considering potentially breaking it up into many pieces and farming out the parts as many novels, or just as one?
No, just as one. The trade publishing setup is very much still with the individual novel. I have
So you're going traditional or die, basically.
going trade publishing. Sorry, I kind of use the word trade because traditional publishing was a kind of something dreamt up by a vanity publisher, but everybody calls it traditional publishing. But I tried to call it trade publishing because that's the correct name. But hey, no problem.
Tell me, is there a difference between the two?
No, traditional publishing is just what it's called sort of colloquially, but trade publishing is very much the proper word for it, if you see what I mean. It's a bit like...
no, I've heard that before.
It's a bit like calling Holland Holland or vice versa. Holland is the word everybody calls it, but it's really the Netherlands. So a big deal. But yeah, no, with trade publishing, they really are still in the frame of mind for the big 80,000 word novel. With self-publishing, I did try that, but it's not been a great success for me. So I'm trying to work out what I want to do.
What do you think prevented your work from being successful in the indie world?
I'm not sure. I'm not. I think there's every writer, every novelist needs to do promotion, but with publishing, there's also the marketing aspect of it, and marketing is something a little bit different from promotion in that it's trying to get the books into shops. It's trying to get them, trying to get the sort of big angle publicity for it, and that's really hard if you're a bit like me and you're a bit shy. And I've tried taking the books to conventions, but I can only do a certain number of conventions a year, and I saturate the markets there. So it would be easier in some ways to get the book into a bookshop and do it like that rather than try and self-market it. That's been my problem. But there are absolutely plenty of people who do well with self-publishing. It's not a bad idea, and it's made so much easier by ebooks. And if I dropped
this woman's name like it's hot, but Emma Hardcastle is a woman that I talked to the first time I did podcasting. She's very motivated. She has some good things to say about being an indie publishing author. Yeah. And the lady that I talked to yesterday also is publishing her book on the indie side of things.
Oh,
I don't know, if you go in the direction, they both had some really fascinating things to say. But you're right, though, it's hard, and you have to sell. And I am not good at selling either. No. I never sell myself. I feel very, very awful doing it. And
I find it much easier to go to a convention with some books and sell them to people from the dealer's room. But that's not going to get me very far because I'm only one person. I can only do that several times a year, and it's really hard. The most self-publishing income now comes from ebooks, and they're really hard to get noticed online. And it's also keeping the material coming out, and I'm not very good at that at the moment. I had a spurt in 2014, but then I kind of got bogged down with one book, and it was really hard just to write it and throw it out there. So it's horses for courses, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, honestly. There's a guy, his name is Joshua Robinson. I had the joy of talking with him for an hour, and he was a WordPress guy. He got 85,000 followers, and he now can retire from his job, and he can write full time. So I just don't. I think followers are key. I think that's what it is. I think content is king.
Keeping hold of the audience and getting the material out there very quickly is probably the best thing for self-publishers. With trade publishing, it can go a little bit slower because you've got more exposure to different markets.
But you have that machine behind you too, and it's grinding and it's pushing you forward, and it's got all those gears working.
So it really is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, that kind of thing. It's not certainly I don't think the two areas should really be so antagonistic towards each other.
No, I don't either. I think they're not hand-holding necessarily, but I don't think that necessarily I'm an indie and you are a trade. I think that I'm an indie.
Yeah.
I'm working my way up to having a lot of this work handled by other people. So hey, guess what? I've got millions of readers. Would you like them?
Anyway.
Anyway, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on here. Is there anything that you would like any listeners to know about before we part ways?
Are you going to put the links to the books in the comments
check out the show notes? Make sure that everything is in there the way that you want it. If you want me to edit, send me an email.
Fine. Thank you. Anyway, thank you very much for having me on, Brian. It's really nice to speak to you. And
it was as well to speak to you. I really enjoyed this conversation.
And you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
It's really great to have with something to contribute to the forum and to promote with us. And I mean, everybody there contributes, but I like seeing people doing this. I think it's great to have. We have some quite good bloggers. We have some lovely artists. We have some great podcasters like you. So hopefully that would be really, it'd be really great to hear to see you continue to do it.
No, I want to, definitely. And I feel like there's something special there, and I want to see more people not just contribute, not just ask for critiques, but write every day, put stories out there, put words out there. Just don't worry about asking for critique. Just tell stories. Just enjoy yourself, live your life, do it because you love it. And thank you. You're an amazing person. This was a really great conversation, and you enjoy the rest of your day. And make sure you vote.
My husband already has, because we get postal votes. But I go down to the polling booth at 7 o'clock in the morning when the polls open and vote in person. I've done that for a long time. So, okay. See you, Brian. Take care.
Right, bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Louise Ogden. Evan Waterman will be my next conversation. He is a writer. He's got a comic book in development at the moment. Really great conversation with him about developing comics. He's a coder by trade. Canadian also. Not that I'm Canadian, I'm just saying he's a Canadian in general. That's where he's from. Vancouver. I've never been. British Columbia. Beautiful up in that area. Lived in Seattle for a little bit. Really enjoyed that conversation. Some connection issues to start us off, but those got edited out, so you might not even notice they existed. Otherwise, till then, have a great day.